Cast is now starting.
Now
All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, 10 attendees.
Good morning. We'll start in a few minutes. This is Nancy Fried. Good morning. This is Nancy Friedel. We don't have everyone who is registered on yet, so I'm just going to give it another minute and then we'll get started. Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Nancy Friedel and I'm the Director of Technology, and we're going to be covering your favorite topic, dues processing, today. Carol Warman, who is also on the National Technology Committee, is with me, and she will be watching to see if anyone has questions. This webinar will be recorded and will be posted on the national website under webinar resources, probably by tomorrow. I want to just do a test to see if people know how to raise their hands. There should be an icon that looks like a hand on your desktop there in the little box that you came up when you signed in. If you could just click to raise your hand, we just want to check to see that everyone knows how to do it. And then we'll deal with those who don't. Okay, so to repeat, well, we're getting more, all right. So I'm asking you to raise your hand just so that I know you will be able to raise your hand during the webinar if you have a question. Chris Jensen, are you on the line? There he is, he raised it, okay. Just wanted to make sure you could raise your hand. Let's see.
Susan Addison.
First I see Jean Maley.
Betsy.
Jean, are you on the line? Jean?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, could you just click the little icon to raise your hand so that I know you know how to ask a question during the webinar?
I don't see a hand, and I was given the message that I needed to download it, and so I re-downloaded it, and it said a session is already open. So what I'm seeing on my screen is just connected to GoToMeeting, get support, but I can't see what you're showing me.
Why don't you close out and then click on the link that was sent to you again? My guess is you're in a practice session.
Oh, okay. Where it says, let's see.
You got an email with the link to join. Just close out of GoToWebinar and then go back and come back in with that link.
Okay, I'm there now. It says go to opener and I'll do open link. Okay, now it says a session is already running. You can only have one session running at a time. Click close to return to the session in progress and leave it so you can join this. So I'll click close.
But I have a feeling you're in the practice session. That's why I'm saying you should completely close out and then go back to the, so that you don't have any sessions up, and then go back to the email and come back in.
Okay, I will do that.
All right.
Join webinar. And then go to opener, and to do that, it says choose other application. Maybe I just drop down to open link.
Yeah, but did you go all the way out so that you're closed out of the session that was active?
I did, but now I'm getting that message again. A session is already running.
Yeah, you need to completely close out of it with your browser so that, and come back in. Because you haven't gone out, because I can still see your name.
Oh, okay. I'll click out of my email totally and go back in.
But you have to close it from the browser as well.
Okay, I'm not sure how to do that.
The little icon in the lower right-hand corner that looks like a little flower, just click on that and do a file exit.
Oh, here it is. Technology dues processing webinar.
Yes. Now do you see an icon to raise your hand? Should be a little panel that just has a symbol that looks like a hand.
No. At the top it says, now viewing Nancy Pradell's screen, talking Jean Maley, Zoom, screenshot, Assistance League, technology, dues processing. Oh, I see the hand.
Okay, there you go. Very good. All right.
Thank you for your patience.
That's okay. And
we have Marlene on twice, but she raised her hand in one instance.
Okay. All right. So is that all then?
Susan Addison, would you please raise your hand?
It looks like she doesn't have any audio, but.
Right, I see that. And Betsy Suman.
I can't. You must be Betsy. Do you see the hand icon?
Yes.
Could you click it just so we can see that you know how to ask a question?
Okay, it should be, it looks like I've already clicked on it.
There it is. Now you have.
Now we see it. Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
All
when
right.
I had it so it was green, and now you want it when it's red, huh? Huh, okay, that seems strange. Okay,
The only
All
one
right.
is Susan Addison, who has no audio.
Okay. Well, we're going to get started. Let me.
Okay. Do you want me
Could you unraise the hands while I keep talking?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. So if you have a question during the webinar, just raise your hand and Carol will notify me and you can ask your question, and then we'll stop at certain times throughout to ask questions.
You will unmute them so they can ask the question.
I will unmute them so they can ask a question.
Okay, I think they're all unraised.
Okay, so welcome, and let's get started. What we're going to cover today is we're going to talk about dues payments, when you have to do them and how you do them. We'll talk about what's new this year, and we'll talk about something new in the way you add a new member, and we'll talk a little bit about reports. So the dues payment cycle. When do you pay dues? You pay them by the first day of the chapter's fiscal year, and we'll talk about that fiscal year on the next slide, but it's the first day of your chapter's fiscal year. You can enter them, and as you get them and not pay until the beginning of the fiscal year, or you can pay them as they come in. It's up to you. But the other thing that some chapters don't seem to recognize is that any month that a member joins, rejoins, or pays lapsed dues, at the end of that month, you're supposed to submit a payment for dues to the national organization. So what happens if the dues are not paid? If the member is not in an active status, they won't be able to log on to the national website, and nor their chapter website if it's part of multi-site, because it's a single login. And the member, when we are counting delegates, they won't count towards the delegate count. Even though they're active at the chapter, they only count if they're active at the national level. And we have starting out friendly reminders we'll be sending out friendly reminders each month the dues are delinquent. Unfortunately, we sent out an invoice last month which caused more problems than it fixed, because there was a delay of a couple weeks from when the invoice was sent out and when it was received when it was generated and when it was received by the chapter. So in many cases, the chapter had already paid the dues. And in addition, the person who sent it out had manually calculated it and didn't know to take into account that dues are half price for the third quarter and zero for the fourth quarter. So what we'll be doing in the future is that the end of a month, and we give a month's leeway, we will be sending out an email telling you how many members are outstanding and what the total amount is, but telling you that to pay, you have to go to Chapter Hub and pay the dues, so that we don't have that situation. Because if when we sent out the email, you had 5 members who owed, and when you went to go into Chapter Hub, the number could have gone up or down, depending on whether you had new members or whether you already paid for some. So hopefully that will work better than what was done. So let's talk about what is new this year. One of the things that is new is that last year dues were due to national on the first day of national's fiscal year, but that wasn't quite equitable in having you pay half rate for members when they join, because we have one chapter whose year end is February, 7 that are April, and 5 that are June. So now when a member joins your chapter, the first and second quarter, they'll pay the full amount. The third quarter, they will pay half, either 20 if it's a full member or 5 if it's an assistee. And the fourth quarter, they won't pay anything. The other thing that is going to change is licensing to Chapter Hub. So prior to June 1st, every chapter received 1 license from the national organization. Beginning June 1st, each chapter will receive 2 licenses at a minimum, and we will do that. That will be automatic. But because larger chapters who have 500 members may need more people to help maintain their membership numbers, we will provide up to the delegate count. And the delegate count is based on a formula that basically gives up to 100, you get 1, and I think it's at 150, you start getting 2, and so on. But we won't automatically be giving those licenses out. You must request those additional, because we don't want to create licenses if they're not going to be used. But we think every chapter should have 1 person and a backup. If a chapter wants additional licenses, they can purchase them for $75 per user per year. And there will be a form on the website to do that. And one of the main reasons we're doing this is that sharing licenses or passwords is in violation of a licensing agreement. But we had no way, and we still don't, because over the weekend we were trying to implement the process by which we can have more licenses per chapter, but I'm optimistic that it will be ready by June 1st. So Carol, are there any questions on the licensing or anything we've covered so far?
There are no hands up at this time.
Okay, thank you. One thing that has come up is you go to pay dues and you get to the payment where you enter your name and your account number and your routing number, and you get an error message. And that is most likely because the payment processor no longer supports Internet Explorer because of security reasons when they're dealing with money. So you can use Chrome, Firefox, Edge, and I think with Apple it's Safari. So you can continue to use Internet Explorer for all your personal work if you want to. You should be advised that it's not as secure a browser, but when you're paying dues, you have to use one of the approved browsers. The chapter dues paid through date. It used to be that you could put anything in that chapter dues paid through date, but now that we're using it to determine when the fiscal year and what you owe, it has to be the last date of your chapter's fiscal year. So it would be the month of your chapter fiscal year, the last day of your fiscal year, and then the year. It could be this fiscal year, or it could be next fiscal year. So if you have members who have joined this year for whom you haven't paid, you would put in the current fiscal year. If members are now paying for the next fiscal year, you would use the next fiscal year. But if you enter a date other than the end of your fiscal year, you will get an error message. And when we get to the demo portion, I'll show you a quick way to find out if there are some of your records that have the wrong fiscal year. We try to catch them all, but we may have missed them. So we'll hold off on that until we get to that point. But right now, the main thing to remember is that the chapter dues paid through date must be the last date of a fiscal year. We've added some fields to the, we've added some fields, and there are some fields that are the same as they were, but I just want to talk about them a minute. The first membership date is the date that the member joined or rejoined, and we'll talk about rejoining members in a few minutes. The only exception is that when we added that field to the record, so calculate what amount of dues are owed, we had, since it was a required field, we had to default it to something. So if you see 1/1/1900 as the first membership date for a member, that means that we don't know when their membership date is, and you can go in and update it if you want it for your record, but it won't come into play in determining a new member because they were already in the system when we loaded Chapter Hub. Once it's in there, it shouldn't be changed. So if a member rejoins, you don't change it there. You create a new membership affiliation record, which we'll cover in a few minutes. National roll is something that we are now going to require, because for those of you who were ever a president or helped the president fill out the year-end summary report, it asks a lot of statistics on voting versus non-voting members. And they were difficult to compute because they were at that point in time, and at the time that the president filled out that report, they could have several lapsed members, and they didn't know whether to count them as being a member or not, because they wouldn't be paying their dues for another couple months. So what ended up was they showed as a lot of new members each year, even though they were members from the prior year. By requiring the voting and non-voting, we will be able to calculate that and will no longer ask that question of the presidents. One thing we will be doing is globally changing all of the assistees to non-voting, because assistees are by nature non-voting members. We're adding also a new field for membership end date, and it would only come into play if a member resigned or passed away. If you click the resigned or the deceased option on the member's record or affiliation record, this will be a way to capture the actual end date so that the member doesn't show as being active through the end of the year when they resigned in the middle of the year. There are some optional fields for the chapter's use. We don't use them at all. One is it gives you the ability to capture the amount of dues you charge that member. It's not the dues to the national organization because they're standard, but it's a way to track what the dues you charge the member for the chapter. You can track the last dues paid date. We've added two new fields, classification, because many chapters have different membership levels or classifications. So this is a way for you to, it's free-form text, enter the classification, and also a field to enter the auxiliary that the member may be a part of. In the past, people have been using the field role, R-O-L-E, as a free-form text, and it included any combination. It included voting and non-voting, it included the auxiliary, it included the classification, and you can still do that if you want, because role is a chapter field. But if you would like to be able to use role for the title of the person and use these other fields, you can do that. And we'll be talking later about reports and reports based on that information.
Nancy, excuse me, there's
Yes.
a hand raised. Chris,
Okay.
Chris Jensen.
Okay. Could you unmute him and I will let him ask his question.
He is unmuted.
Okay, Chris, what is your question?
Actually, it's Gail.
Hi, Gail. Well, what is your question?
My question is, we have our dues now is being collected and things like that, and people are not renewing. Some have moved out of the, will be moving out of the area. I was going to leave them through May 31st, which is the end of our fiscal year, because technically they're still here. They just won't be renewing after that date.
Then they would. Then you would mark them as resigned on the date that the end of the fiscal year, and they would be the same dates then. If you do nothing, it will be it will automatically go as lapsed on May 31st,
Okay.
if that's your fiscal year end date.
All right, because I think I did, I marked one as resigned when she left in September and never changed that. She moved out of state. I did not change that resign date. Do you want me to go back in and change that?
Not yet, because I'm talking with the consultant to make it happen right after this meeting, but it's something you could do, but it isn't in place yet. So the purpose is so that you actually know when they left and that we know when they left. But I literally just created the field yesterday.
Okay.
So this is all new and quote, hopefully improved. So.
Well, I think it will be, but will you send out emails? Because I'm the
Yes.
one that entered. Okay, thank you.
All righty, thanks. Bye. Okay, is that it, Carol?
No other hands up.
Okay. We often get the question, I have a member and when I go to pay national dues, they don't show up. So let's just talk about some of the reasons why that may happen. It's based on their status and whether what is listed and CDPD is current dues paid through date and NDPT is national dues paid through date, and I abbreviated them because they wouldn't fit on the slide if I didn't. So basically what we're looking for is if that member is primary to your chapter and has a current dues paid through date that's greater than the national dues paid through date. So if you have updated members' record to say they've paid through May 31st, 2018, and the national dues paid through date, which you can't change but is visible on the screen, says that they were paid through May 31st, 2017, then that member is going to show up. Well, they wouldn't be active. The reason that they would, okay, I take that back. Right at this point in time in April and May, they could still be active and they could be paid through 2018, and you've entered that the chapter dues have been paid through May 31st, 2019. So in that case, if you have a mixture of members who owe for this year and you've entered for next year, you have to be careful when you pay the dues if you don't want to pay for the next year ones yet. If they're lapsed, they'll show, and that was the first example I gave. If they're resigned, if you've marked them resigned, we don't bring it over because we assume you don't want to pay for resigned or deceased members. There's a special circumstance of inactive, and I think this causes the most confusion for chapters. If a member belonged, and let's say they've paid their dues through May 31st, 2016, and then they decide to come back, what you don't do is go in and update their chapter dues paid through date to May 31st, 2019. If you want to take the easy way out, you can contact us and we'll do it for you. But otherwise, what you should do is leave that inactive membership affiliation record intact. That's the history of their first membership date and when they left, or it will show the end of the fiscal year that they left. You would then create a new membership affiliation date, mark it primary, and make the first membership date the rejoin date, and then update the chapter dues paid through date to the fiscal year end being paid through. That way, when you look at that member's record, you will see two membership affiliation records for them. One will not be marked primary. It will show their start date and end date, and they will be resigned. You will see another one that is the primary one, and it will basically be their current membership affiliation record, and that's the one that would show up when you go to pay dues. If you instead change the chapter dues paid through date, it's not bringing over inactive members, and that was on purpose because what used to happen was it would bring them over and let's say they were paid through May 31st, 2016, the dues processing only pays for a year at a time. So you would have paid for them, and it would have paid them through 17. And then the next time you went in, it would have showed them again, and you would have paid through 18. And if you were now paying through 19, you would end up paying for that person 3 times when you don't need to do that if they've been lapsed more than a year. So this is a confusing one. Does anyone have any questions on this inactive status? I can show you an example of it when we do the demo, but I just wanted to take a checkpoint and see if anybody has any questions on this.
I don't see any hands up.
Okay, we will go on.
Wait. Take that back. Chris Jensen.
But we know it's Gail.
You know it's Gail. I will unmute. Okay.
No, it's Chris too.
Okay, all right. Well, no.
You don't have to think. Do you use leave of absence? We do in our chapter, and it's not really, it's the maximum is 3 months at a time.
We do not currently have any facility for leave of absence. I'd have to take it as a note and think about it because we have to figure out how it fits in with the dues processing. We would probably need another indicator, but it would have to be, I have to think about it. So the answer is we don't have that at this time, but we will take it down and see what we can do if that's something that, so you're saying if you wanted to use the roster, to use Chapter Hub for your membership roster, it would be helpful if you could know who's on a leave of absence. Is that
right?
Okay.
The implication is they're coming back soon.
Okay. Let me take it down as an action item, and the answer right now is that there's no facility for it. You could put it in their notes. There's a notes on the affiliation where you could indicate that they're on a leave of absence, but there's no way for it to change the status at this time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Is that it, Carol?
I'm checking, just a minute. Yep, that's it.
Okay. All right. Now, what do you do? What happens when a member joins in the 4th quarter? There are 2 scenarios that could come into play. One, they could, if it's in the first month of the 4th quarter, they would probably be paying for that current fiscal year. So you would enter their chapter dues paid through date as May 31st, 2018, click Save, and you'll see that it automatically puts in a national dues paid through date of May 31st, 2018, if it's happening now, and they will be active. If they're paying through the end of the next fiscal year, since the system only does 1 year at a time, you should do exactly what you did if they were paying for the current fiscal year. Click Save so that they get listed as active, and then you would go in and change their current dues paid through date to the end of the next fiscal year and click Save, and then they will show up, and when you choose to make the payment for the next fiscal year, they will show up for payment. Another situation, we have 2 situations where members who belong or have belonged to another chapter join your chapter. So if a former member of another chapter joins your chapter, meaning they're no longer active with that chapter, then the assumption is that they're going to be primary to your chapter. So you would create a membership affiliation record with their first membership date equal to the date the member joined your chapter, and update their chapter dues paid through date to when they paid dues to you. But then you have to contact chapterhub@assistanceleague.org because we need to change the ownership of that record to your chapter, because if they're now your chapter, most likely their address or phone number has changed, and you need to be able to update their record. The other thing is that a member, you only one chapter needs to pay dues to National for a fiscal year. So what we will then determine is, we'll look to see whether they paid dues to the other chapter for this year. And if they did, you can't do it, but we can make them active in your chapter for this year without your paying any dues to National. If they didn't pay dues for this year to their chapter, then they'll show up when you do the update pay dues and click on continue to National. The other situation is that a member wants to be a member of more than one chapter. You would still create the membership affiliation for the member, but it's the member's choice as to which chapter they consider primary. That gives you the primary, and that gives you the delegate count, but that also means you're the chapter that pays dues to National. So you would need to find out from the member which chapter they consider primary. And if it's yours, you would basically do what we just did on you would contact chapter hubs so that the ownership is changed to your chapter, and then have they will make the chapter made active if the member paid dues to the national organization by the other chapter. If it's their chapter that is going to be the primary chapter, then you still need to contact us so that we can make the member active if they have already paid dues to the national organization by the other chapter. You don't really have to contact us if they didn't pay dues. If they're showing as lapsed, and I see I have a spelling error on assistanceleague.org, but it's chapterhub@assistanceleague.org. If they haven't paid dues to the other chapter, then you would have to pay dues if you're the primary member, or you would need to contact the other chapter to see why they haven't paid their dues. But we can't make them active in yours until they've been paid somewhere. Let's see.
There's a hand.
There's a hand, okay.
There's a hand, Donna Presley.
Okay, Donna, what is your question?
Okay, just unmuted her. Donna Presley?
Donna, did you have a question?
I've unmuted her.
Okay. Donna, you can send an email to chapterhub@assistanceleague.org if you have a question afterwards, but okay. So now there's a few new things here. If you have a new member to Assistance League, and for those of you who have been with Chapter Hub a long time, it's actually going back to the way you used to do it. And I'll be adding a new member and showing you shortly. When you create the new record, the field will now be opened where you will locate your chapter and make that the primary affiliation. We're also going to ask that you complete the gender as the required fields, because we get a lot of questions of how many male members do we have in Assistance League. So one thing that I will be saying at leadership is that if chapters would go in and update their male members, we can globally change the rest to female, so you have less updating. We don't want to do that first. We'd like you to give you the opportunity. For example, our chapter has, I think, 8 or 10 male members, and so we would update those, and then at a point in time, we would go in and change all the ones that didn't have anything to female. When you save a record now, it will automatically create the membership affiliation date, but it will leave some of the required fields blank. So you should then go in and edit it. And you can edit it either by going to that organization affiliation for that member if you're only doing one, or you can update the fields by going to update pay dues. It depends on if you're updating a lot of them at one time or just doing one. And then you should pay dues to the national organization at the end of that month, or earlier if that member really wants access to the national website, because they won't have that access until their dues are paid. Any questions on that one? It'll make more sense when I can show you what happens.
No hands.
Okay, so how do you pay? And we will go through this process. First you find your chapter record. You click on the update pay dues. You update whatever information you want to change. You click save and you click on continue to national. You then select the records you want to pay and click on payment console. As soon as you've clicked on payment console, it creates an order. And if you decide not to pay at that time and then you later realize that there were a couple more members you wanted to add and you go through this process again, you will create a second order, and you can't delete them, but we can. So you can either let us know that you would like us to delete an order. It will be sitting out there. You would then have more than one order awaiting payment if you haven't paid either of them, or you will have the one you paid and the other one sitting there as awaiting payment. We occasionally go in and look at the orders for a chapter, and if we see that there are two orders for close to the same amount of money and we look at the members who are going to be paid and the same one is on both, we'll delete it. But you can always ask us to delete it. And then you click submit, and when you click submit and you continue to the payment console, a couple of things here. The name on the payment console, not your name. It is, the first name is just Assistance League, and it would be nice if we could default it, but we can't. It's a package and we don't have a way to do that. The chapter name minus Assistance League, so if it's Albuquerque, it just says Albuquerque. It would say Assistance League is the first name, Albuquerque as the second name. Since this is ACH and not a credit card, you don't have to put in the address, but we don't have it for the fields that display on the screen. You put in the email if you want to receive a confirmation back. You put in the routing number, and it must be 9 digits. We switched payment processors several months ago. I think it was in October, and this new payment processor is now catching a lot of errors if you have the wrong routing number, but it can't catch at that time if you put in a bad account number. What happens with the account number is wrong. It actually says that it's submitted and processed. It goes to our bank, and then that goes to your bank to retrieve the money. When it can't find the account, it returns, and it usually takes 4 or 5 days, and Assistance League gets charged a fee of $3.50 every time something is returned. And then this will trigger an email going to you telling you to go in and resubmit that order that you had the wrong account number. So are there any questions on the payment console? Because it's gotten much, much better than the first year. A combination of people being more familiar with it and with the new payment processor catching more errors. So no questions, Carol?
No, I don't see any hands.
Okay, so then we're now going to go to Salesforce, and I have logged in to a fictitious chapter called Assistance League of Test Chapter. One thing that we are looking to do is to change this update pay dues to be a button that's at the top of the screen. Where you see edit, it would be next to it, but we haven't done that yet. So you would find your chapter record, and once you found it, you would click update pay dues. So there's not a lot of members in this test chapter, but one of the things I wanted to show you, these are all full members. So if I wanted to update their national roll to voting, I could click on voting and I could select them all. And then I can apply header values to selected records. So if I deselected Margaret because I want her to be non-voting, I now apply the heading values to selected, and it will update all the ones that are there. So that's a quick way to update the voting and non-voting. For those chapters that were using roll for voting and non-voting, a while ago I copied it over to national roll. I don't know that it's completely up to date. On this screen you see their name. You can click on the name if you want to look up that person. You would enter them as full member, lifetime member, assisting, or staff. They should be primary, or they shouldn't have come up on the screen in the first place. Here is their first membership date, and that's what's used to determine the amount. The chapter status is active because their chapter dues paid through date is May 31st, 2018. If I changed this to 17 and saved it, it now changed that status to lapsed, which doesn't make sense since they paid their dues on December 20th, 2017. But at this point, no dues have been paid to the national organization. So they are, when you look over here at the national dues paid through date, the dues have not been paid except for 2 members that show that they paid dues through May 31st, 2018. You also can track the dues. So if the dues for everyone is the same, I can select all and apply header values to selected, and now all of the members show the last chapter dues paid through date. So this is just a way, especially this time of year, where you could do the May 31st, 2018, 19 as the chapter dues paid through date and apply it to the ones that you receive payment for.
Nancy, after
Yes.
after the apply header values, you would have to click save, of course.
I don't think so, but it never hurts to click save.
I think I tried it once and it did.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's do save. Let's be sure. And it says it was updated. So when you apply the header values, click save. Thanks, Carol.
Mhm.
So now we're going to continue to national dues, and I would expect to see, I have no national dues paid through date for 3, and I have 2 where they're paid through May 31st, 18. So I would expect to see 3 records when I go to this next screen. And I do. And you see that this test chapter has a fiscal year end of May 31st. So this person joined in, the first 2 people joined in the 3rd quarter, so their dues show $20 each, whereas the Susie Smith first membership date was July. We just haven't paid dues for her yet, so hers is the full $40. So once I click, if I select to pay them all and do continue, I now have created an order, and the order shows up in the left-hand corner. And what we recommend is that you click on this print export, and you can either do it as a printable view and it'll show with the blue color, or you can do export details and it's strictly a spreadsheet. We recommend that you keep this report, send it to your treasurer to verify that these are the people you're paying for as backup for what you paid.
Nancy, excuse me. We have a question
If-
that was typed in by Phyllis Nicholas,
Okay.
and the question is how to get auxiliary to show under type.
Auxiliary is not a type. All auxiliary members are full members. Where you can use, when we go to add a new member, I will show you where you would put auxiliary. Remind me if I forget, Carol. But every auxiliary member is a full member of,
Right.
well, is either a full member or an assisting or a lifetime member. There is no auxiliary type with Assistance
Right.
League, and
There's
same dues.
There's another field that's used to indicate auxiliary.
Right, and we'll show you that when we add a new member.
Okay.
All right. So this is where I can print the order receipt. I also can go to orders and I can choose orders awaiting payment. Surprising. I thought I would have seen the one that I just created.
What was the number?
Let's go back. $2289. Oh, I know why. Because I'm logged in as with my license. Well, I don't know why it's not showing up, but your orders should show up, and you should see an order as awaiting payment. I think it has something to do with my login at this point.
Let me see what I can find out. All right.
So while Carol's checking on that, let's say we have a new member.
It's awaiting payment.
Yeah, I don't know why it's not showing up, but yours will. It's because of how I've come in. So I want to add a new individual. And this individual is a member, and I'm going to call her, I'll call her Phyllis, but I won't use Nikolai because I don't want a duplicate name in the system.
Phyllis, new member.
All right, so here's the difference. Over here is primary affiliation, which will always be your chapter name. And if you have entered it before, like if I click in test chapter, it will be listed under recent items, so you don't even have to do the search. If it's the very first time I've ever filled in this field, you'd have to click the search and then bring up test chapter and choose it.
You want to pick the first one where the type is AL chapter and the type is chapter.
Correct. You don't want to pick a thrift shop or consignment shop or the parent.
Right.
But once at this point, I can just click on test chapter. You would fill in their phone and email, because if they don't have an email, they won't have a login to the website. Down here, gender, you would fill in female. We're not requiring it at this point, but we're asking you to fill in generation. We figured people don't want to give us exactly their birth date, but we'd like to know the generation so that we can have some statistics on how much our population is aging. Birth date, let's say my birth date is April 25th. I just put in today's date, this year. We keep it as a date just to make it easier to use, but we're not doing anything with the year. And when it displays, it's only going to display the month and year. So let me save this record.
Nancy, excuse me. When did you make this change where the affiliation is an open field for the chapters? Was that recently?
Yes, very recently.
Like today?
Like today.
Yeah, okay, because now I understand. I added a new member yesterday and that wasn't the case. So, okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
And really this birth date we'd probably be hiding and you would just see the birthday. But what you'll notice is that it already the organization affiliation record. It made an affiliation record for Phyllis to be a member of the test chapter, primary to that chapter. It defaulted to full member, and it used her start date is today. So what you would then do is go in and edit it to say whether she's voting or non-voting. If she's an assist, there shouldn't be any new lifetimes unless they're coming from another chapter, but you would indicate whether she's an, if she were an assistee, you could change it here. You would put the first membership date in, and you would put the chapter dues paid through date in. So if we made her, you can make them today or you can make them the actual day that they happened. So let's say I put in 05/31, 5/30/18, and I save the record. I'm going to get an error message because the chapter dues paid through date is not the end of a fiscal year. So if I change that and I click save,
Nancy,
I now, go ahead.
I was going to just remind you about the auxiliary, Phyllis's question.
Yes, okay, so now let me go in and edit this record. So because the person joined in the fourth quarter, they are, as soon as you hit enter, they're active with an end date of May 31st, 2018. So some of the new fields that were added were, the role has always been there. The membership classification is sustaining or whatever classifications you have, and this is where you would put auxiliary. And most chapters use an abbreviated name for the auxiliary here instead of writing the whole thing out. You then would be able to do reports by auxiliary, and I'll show you that in a minute. And the role, as I say, right now the role, I see some that say voting active, but you can actually get the voting from the national roll and you can get the active from the status. Or they'll say that what the auxiliary is, and you can continue to do that, but we wanted to give you the ability to have this be a database where a field represents one thing. And so you can use those if you want. You'll notice they are not required. They don't have the red. So let's save this. Any questions on the new members? The big difference is you enter your chapter and then you go in and edit. And you could either edit it, if you were only doing one member, you could go down and edit that membership affiliation record right there. If you were entering 15 new members, you could enter them all and then go to update paid dues and update those information because they probably have similar paid through dates and first membership dates, depending on how exact you're being with the first membership date. So no questions, Carol?
No.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
So let's
wait.
Whoops.
Phyllis, we have
Okay.
a typed question from Phyllis. Comment only. Since we have two different sets of records, it would be helpful if auxiliary would show on update paid dues screen.
We have a limited amount of landscape on that page.
Very tight.
In order to show auxiliary, we would have to take something else off. And I'm not sure what that would be at this time, but I will take it as a comment, just like the
way it
one
was
that
stated.
Chris had on the leave of absence.
Okay, there's another comment from Phyllis. Maybe a star after name.
No, we don't want to. We don't, because you click on the name. The name is a field that's linked, so, and we don't want stars. We don't want to combine two things into one field.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll take it as something to look at.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, so now we're going to go to reports. And most of these reports that are here are reports that you have from that were on that related links on the chapter page. Let's just go back there for a minute and I'll show you. So if we go to test chapter and we come down here, there's chapter roster, there's a chapter roster with emergency contact information, there's board roster, there's several reports that are here. You didn't used to be able to even have this tab, but now you do, and we have created a new folder called Reports Test Chapter. So what you can do is you can take any of these reports and customize them and save them, delete some fields, add some fields, and save them for a report that more specifically gives what you want, where you could include auxiliary as part of the roster as a field. Let me just go to the slides. I had a slide on it. Let's see what I said there. So basically, this is new, and we need to do some training on reports, but the main thing that I want to get across is that if you see a roster and you'd like to have a report that omits some of those columns or adds some other columns, contact us and we can create the report for you, or you can create your own. So you would click on the report, you'd click customize, you'd add what fields you want, and then you would do a save as, and you'd store it in your folder. It would then be available for any of the licenses for your chapter. So let's go back and do that. So I'm going to take the board roster report. So I click on it to run it. Takes a little while. These are a little different, that they have some auto filters in them. So once you get a couple reports, or we create one for you just for your chapter, it will be easier. And it's still chugging away. So basically we would want to customize it. And when you customize it, you notice you don't have the ability to save it, because we don't want you overwriting the existing report. So you could only do a save as. And the way this is generating a report for every chapter. So we would want to add some filters. So I would add a field filter, and I would look for the field that I want, and I would want to say, if the organization household name contains test chapter. I probably picked the wrong one because I probably don't have any roster in for this one, but I should have probably picked another chapter. Yes, there's none there. Well, you wouldn't do this for yours, but I'm going to change this to say Southern Utah. It contains Utah. I don't need to say Southern. I'll pick on it since it's my chapter. And let's say I don't care what the national role is. I just want to know what we call it in the chapter. So I'm going to remove that column. So all I did was click on it in the header and do remove. And they're all board positions, so I don't need that column. Now I will do a save as, and I would say roster Southern Utah. Even though we're in test chapter, we wouldn't do that. I could either save it to my personal custom reports, and then it would only be available to my login, or I can save it to the reports test chapter, and it will be available for both of the license, or as many licenses as we have. So I save it and run the report, and then I can export it or printable view. If I now go back to reports and I click on reports test chapter, I've got that roster Southern Utah. Some of what we want to do is, when you, let's say we wanted to customize that one again, when you customize and you have fields to select from, there are loads of fields that we don't use. So we want to create some report types that only have the fields we use, so that it isn't as confusing. And we will be having sessions on reports, but I just wanted to let you know that it's available and that we can help you if you would like to get something out as a report.
Another question, Nancy, from
Okay.
Chris or Gail or
Whomever.
whichever one. Okay,
Hi,
unmuted.
Okay,
Hi,
Gail.
Gail. I have the Assistine board that I tried to enter to update. I was able to get our chapter board in, but when I went to click, there was nothing for Assistine. Am I not finding that?
That's the first time that has ever been requested, because I didn't know the Assistines had a board, because they're all...
I'm not sure they actually call it a board, but they do have something. Yeah, they do. They have a board.
Governing body?
I'm sorry. Yes, a governing body.
Governing body.
I will take that one down. What you would do now is put it as others, because the national role was a way to have a single line item for all of the positions that national needs to have a contact point for. And we'll be covering this on May 1st in the webinar on updating your roster. Put other, and it could be a board position. It would show on yours, but right now I'm not sure how it would distinguish between the regular board and the Assistine board. So I'm getting lots of action items out of this webinar. I will look into it.
Okay, so right now I should just enter it as other.
You would enter the national role as other, and then you could put the role as whatever it is in your chapter. So it could say, the role could say Assistine. What is a role? Do you have a president?
They call it something else, and I don't have it in front of me right now.
But you can use that. You could use other, and you could use the role, R-O-L-E, my Pittsburgh accent, which has never gone away. I can't distinguish between those words too well. You would, you could put Assistine treasurer, or
Okay.
whatever it is. You could prefix it by Assistine, and then you could do a roster where you filtered on the a report where you filtered on the role starting with Assistine.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, if it doesn't, I have your email address.
Yes, you do. Okay, so
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, Gail?
You mean Carol?
Carol, either one. Yes,
Yeah,
Carol.
Right, no questions, no.
Okay, so we're a couple minutes over, but I want to thank you for attending and all your good questions. All of these, I've listed all the members of the technology committee. Carol's actually on leave of absence, but she agreed to help me today out of the goodness of her heart. And Mary Beth, I forgot to update her, so she's the number that's missing here. I think it's 9. So basically, for example, Joanne Cavan is tech03 at assistanceleague.org. I'm technology at assistanceleague.org. So you can contact any one of the members. Sherry Kasinger gets all the emails if you don't know, you can't change your password. Nikki is the one that does all the technical stuff behind the website, and Karen Smith does the resource library, and Carol is our chapter hub person. So basically, if it's a chapter hub question, you can just use chapter hub at assistanceleague.org. If your website is ready for review or you want one, you can use chapter website reviewer. If it's a tech question about website, you can use webmaster, and if you're not sure, or anytime you want, it's technology at assistanceleague.org. So we will be recording, as I say, this was recorded. We'll put it up on the website. I'm interested in your feedback if there's still things that you want to know about it, or I'm sure you'll email me if this didn't cover your particular questions. For attending, and hopefully we'll talk to you on May 1st for the updating the board rosters. So thank you, and we'll see you next time. Bye.